If a high-ranking alien diplomat tells you that a single soft, acoustic frequency can completely disarm a planetary military siege, you would call them insane. But the galaxy is about to learn that when a human mother opens her mouth to sing, even the cosmos's most brutal apex predators drop to their knees. Welcome back to Frontline HFY. If you want to see how a simple, ancient human custom completely shattered the cold, brutal protocols of the Galactic Council and turned the universe's most feared monsters into a fiercely loyal family, smash that subscribe button right now. Let's head straight to the front lines. The high-security containment sector of the Galactic Coalition's flagship, the Aegis, did not feel like a place of diplomacy. It felt like a multi-million-credit slaughterhouse. The walls were constructed from triple-reinforced high-gloss titanium, bathed in the harsh, sterile glow of blue stasis fields. Dr. Elena Vance stood in front of the primary viewport, her reflection looking small and incredibly fragile against the massive armored glass. Behind that glass sat a nightmare. The Coalition had just captured an active biological variable from the deep sectors of Vargari apex predator cub, but to the cold, rigid alien scientists running the facility, this was not a child. It was a weapon of mass destruction in its infancy. The Vargari were legendary throughout the cosmos as relentless, hyper-muscular saber-toothed hybrids. They possessed absolutely no cybernetic enhancements or synthetic parts. They were 100% organic, raw power. The cub in the chamber was roughly the size of a large earth mastiff. It had tough, entirely translucent pinkish-tin skin. Beneath its clear membrane, Elena could clearly see the thick, dark ropes of hyperdense muscle violently twisting and bunching. The cub's veins pulsed with a hot, rapid rhythm as adrenaline flooded its system. It was utterly terrified. The alien researchers were treating the situation with standard, brutal protocol. They had dialed the neural dampeners to maximum. The air inside the chamber buzzed with a harsh, high-frequency digital hum meant to suppress the cub's natural instincts. Every time the young beast tried to stand on its powerful digitigrade hind legs, the automated neural pulses would violently shock its system. The little space wolf let out a heartbreaking, high-pitched yip of pure pain, its two large, deeply expressive amber eyes welling with glassy tears. The biological asset is showing unacceptably high resistance levels, Director Valen, a cold, cybernetically augmented alien official, sneered from behind his glowing holopad. Increase the neural suppression to 80%. If the brain patterns do not stabilize, authorize a complete neural wipe. Are you completely out of your mind? Elena snapped, her human empathy instantly flaring into rage. He isn't resisting your data. He's dying of sheer terror. You're torturing a child. It is not a child, Dr. Vance, Valen replied coldly, his robotic voice modulator clicking into a harsh tone. It is a Class 9 apex predator. It does not possess a soul. It possesses a payload. If we do not break its spirit now, it will grow into a monster that can dismantle a planetary defense grid with its bare claws. Elena looked back at the glass. The cub had dropped to its belly, shivering violently against the cold metal deck plating. It was clutching a small, heavily chewed piece of carbon fiber insulation rope, its only comfort item. Its tail, usually thick and powerful, was tucked tightly between its hind legs. Humans are space orcs. The galaxy knows us for our stubbornness, our heavy world muscle, and our devastating kinetic weaponry. But the galaxy constantly forgets our most dangerous, unpredictable trait, our absolute refusal to let a child suffer alone. Without asking for authorization, Elena stepped directly up to the primary intercom panel. She overrode the security protocols, cutting off the harsh, high-frequency digital suppression hum. The alien researchers instantly panicked, their fingers flying over their glowing datapads. Dr. Vance, step away from the controls. Valen roared, his mechanical arm whirring as he reached for the security lock. The asset will become aggressively active. Elena ignored him. She took a deep, steady breath, leaned directly into the microphone, and did the one thing no alien protocol could ever predict. She didn't use an acoustic disruptor. She didn't use a command code. She began to softly sing an ancient, slow earth lullaby. The soft, rhythmic, acoustic frequencies of her human voice floated gently through the chamber's heavy audio receptors. The shivering, translucent-skinned cub instantly froze. Its two large, amber eyes locked directly onto Elena's face through the glass. The entire high-tech facility descended into a breathless, stunned silence. But out in the deep void, a massive dreadnought-class Vargari fleet had just jumped out of hyperspace, their heavy plasma cannons locking directly onto the station's primary coordinates. The soft, melodic vibrations of the human lullaby drifted through the high-security chamber like a warm breeze cutting through a glacier. Elena's voice was gentle, a rhythmic, soothing melody passed down through generations of a heavy-world species that knew how to comfort its young. Inside the glass enclosure, the change was instantaneous. The adolescent Vargari predator stopped shivering. The dark, thick ropes of muscle pulsing violently beneath its translucent pinkish-tint skin began to visibly relax, settling into a calm, steady rhythm. Its two large, deeply expressive amber eyes widened, tracking the shifting tones of Elena's voice with absolute, undivided fascination. Slowly, carefully, the dog-sized cub uncurled from its defensive stance. It crawled forward on its heavy, digitigrade paws, dragging its chewed carbon fiber rope toy across the cold titanium floor grates until it was pressed flush against the reinforced viewport. It let out a low, vibrating rumble deep within its chest, a pure, biological sound that wasn't a growl. It was a massive alien purr. Incredible. One of the junior alien researchers whispered, his data slate slipping slightly from his hands. The asset's heart rate has dropped by 60%. The stress hormones are dissipating, without chemical or digital intervention. This is a violation of containment protocol. Director Valen roared, his cybernetic eye violently whirring as it calibrated to the sudden drop in room tension. He slammed his metallic palm onto the main console, cutting the intercom line. The human melody abruptly died. The moment the music stopped, the cub's amber eyes snapped wide with a sudden, sharp panic. It let out a heartbreaking, high-pitched yip, frantically scratching its heavy organic claws against the thick glass, desperately trying to reach the human on the other side. Reinstate the neural suppression field immediately, Valen commanded, his synthetic voice modulator clipping into a high-pitched screech. The human has contaminated the test subject's psychological profile. It's called empathy, you oversized calculator. Elena shouted, stepping fiercely between Valen and the control panel. He isn't an asset. He's a baby, and he's responding to a mother's voice. Before Valen's security droids could move to restrain Elena, the flagship's secondary emergency klaxons violently erupted. The sterile blue stasis lights across the corridor instantly shifted to a blinding, rhythmic flashing crimson. The heavy floor plates beneath their boots began to violently shudder, vibrating with a deep, sub-bass resonance that signified massive capital ships dropping out of hyperspace right on top of their position. The main tactical holodable in the center of the command bridge flickered to life, projecting a terrifying visual. A massive matte black Vargari dreadnought, a jagged, organic mountain of hyperdense biological armor, had materialized just thousands of kilometers away. It hadn't broadcast a diplomatic greeting. It hadn't sent a demand for parley. Its primary plasma cannons were already glowing with a lethal, blinding energy, actively locking directly onto the Aegis's primary reactor core. Director, a panicked comms officer screamed, his hands trembling over his interface. The Vargari flagship is broadcasting a maximum yield wideband transmission. It's their Supreme Alpha, Warlord Kalen. The main viewing screen glitched violently, replaced by a massive, terrifying visual. Alpha Kalen was an absolute mountain of pure biological dominance. Towering over 8 feet tall, his majestic frame was covered in tough, translucent skin that showcased the thick, dark ropes of muscle beneath. His terrifying canine snout was pulled back in a silent, lethal snarl, exposing rows of saber-like teeth. His intelligent, fiercely glowing amber eyes glared through the transmission, carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. "You have stolen the bloodline of the pack," Kalen's deep, sub-bass voice boomed through the speakers, violently rattling the glass windows of the research lab. "You have 60 solar seconds to return my cub. If the child's life signs drop by even a single percentile, my fleet will reduce this station to ash and hunt your species to extinction." The alien scientists froze in absolute, paralyzed terror. They had intended to use the cub as political leverage, but they had vastly underestimated the raw, unyielding protectiveness of a Vargari pack. "Prepare the automated defense grid," Valen ordered, his cybernetic processors trying to calculate a tactical response. "We cannot surrender the asset under a direct threat. If you fire a single shot, they will shred us before your lasers even finish charging." Elena yelled, her eyes flashing with determination. She turned away from the panicked director and ran directly toward the primary airlock manual bypass. If diplomacy was going to fail, she was going to use the only weapon she had left, a human custom the galaxy was entirely unprepared for. When an 8-foot-tall Space Wolf warlord threatens to turn your station into a floating graveyard, you don't look at a tactical datapad. You look for a miracle. Elena didn't hesitate. She slammed her palm onto the primary airlock manual override. The triple-reinforced titanium blast doors hissed violently, sliding open to reveal the containment chamber. "Dr. Vance, step back. That is an active Class 9 biological threat." Director Valen screamed, his cybernetic limb whirring as he reached for his plasma sidearm. But Elena wasn't listening. She stepped completely inside the cold enclosure, leaving herself entirely unarmored and exposed. The adolescent Vargari cub didn't lunge. It didn't bare its razor-sharp teeth. The moment it saw Elena enter, its large amber eyes widened with pure, unfiltered relief. It scrambled forward on its powerful digitigrade legs, sliding across the slick metal floor, and buried its massive, translucent pinkish-tan head directly into Elena's lap. The giant space puppy let out a series of high-pitched, ecstatic yips, its thick tail wagging so hard it left visible scuff marks on the high-gloss walls. Elena instantly dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms tightly around the beast's hyper-muscular, translucent neck. She could feel the rapid, terrified thumping of its heart beneath the clear skin, its dark veins pulsing with residual adrenaline. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're okay," she whispered, her human maternal instincts completely taking over. Outside the glass, Valen's security droids lined up, their glowing red targeting lasers tracking directly onto the cub's spine. The Vargari countdown is at 30 solar seconds. The comms officer shrieked, his voice cracking under the immense pressure. Their primary plasma cannons are at maximum charge. They are preparing to fire. "Director, override the comms," Elena shouted, looking directly into the lab's security camera while tightly holding the whimpering cub. "Patch my audio directly to the Vargari dreadnought. Now." Valen hesitated, his cold, mechanical processors frantically calculating the survival probabilities. Realizing that a full-scale plasma bombardment meant absolute annihilation, he violently slammed his cybernetic hand onto the wideband transmitter. "Transmission live," Valen rasped. "May the creators have mercy on your flesh, human." The audio link to the massive black Vargari flagship snapped open with a heavy burst of static. On the main view screen, Alpha Kalen stood like an immovable mountain of muscle, his terrifying canine snout snarling as his claws prepared to give the execution order to his entire fleet. Elena took a deep, steady breath. She didn't offer a diplomatic speech. She didn't read a coalition treaty. Instead, she closed her eyes, gently stroked the translucent white, furless ears of the cub at her lap, and began to sing the ancient Earth lullaby once more. Her voice echoed through the wideband frequency, broadcasting not just to the research lab, but directly onto the bridge of the most terrifying military dreadnought in the cosmos. The soft, acoustic melody floated over the hum of the starship's massive plasma engines, carrying a strange, heavy world warmth that the cold void of space had never heard before. The effect was instantaneous and staggering. On the flagship view screen, Alpha Kalen's massive arm froze mid-air. His glowing amber eyes violently dilated, snapping into wide, stunned circles. The terrifying snarl completely melted off his canine face. Behind him, his giant, hyper-muscular honor guards rigidly stopped in their tracks. The entire bridge of the alien warship descended into a dead, breathless silence. Down in Elena's lap, the cub let out a long, deeply contented sigh, its dark ropes of muscle completely relaxing as it closed its eyes, drifting into a peaceful sleep under the soothing rhythm of the human song. Alpha Kalen slowly lowered his hand. He stared through the transmission monitor, his intelligent eyes locked onto the fragile human female, holding his child with absolute, unyielding protectiveness. When the galactic warlord finally spoke, the terrifying subbase roar was entirely gone. His voice was a low, deeply reverent whisper that shook the communication array. "That sound," Kalen rumbled, his chest pulsing beneath his translucent skin. "That is the ancient song of the first Denver, the melody of the biological protector. Human, who taught you the sacred blood hymn of my ancestors?" Elena slowly opened her eyes, her hands never stopping their gentle, rhythmic stroking of the sleeping cub's translucent, pinkish-tan skin. "It's not a blood hymn, Alpha Kalen," Elena said softly, her voice carrying clearly through the live wideband transmission. "It's just a lullaby. It's what human mothers sing to comfort their children when they are frightened in the dark." On the massive viewing screen, the towering Vargari warlord stood entirely motionless. For a species that had conquered countless sectors through raw biological dominance and unmatched martial fury, this was a conceptual shockwave. In the cold, unyielding hierarchy of the Vargari Empire, a cub was raised on the harsh metrics of survival, combat training, and pack structure. The concept of an acoustic melody designed purely to radiate peace and parental protection was completely alien to their history. And yet, every biological fiber of Kalen's ancient genetic code recognized its power. Director Valen stepped forward, his cybernetic eye violently spinning as he tried to regain control of the room. "Alpha Kalen, the Coalition demands an immediate cessation of hostilities. This human's unauthorized actions do not reflect." "Silence, machine," Kalen growled, a low, vibrating bass note that instantly caused the director's vocalizer to glitch and cut out. The giant space dog warlord didn't look at the Coalition scientists. His intensely glowing amber eyes remained locked entirely on Elena. "For 3 solar cycles, my scouts have reported that humanity is a species of unarmored, fragile primitives. We believed you were weak. We believed you were fit only for labor in the logistics hubs." Kalen slowly stepped closer to his command console, his massive digitigrade legs moving with a heavy, deliberate grace. "But a species that can disarm the hunting instincts of a Class 9 apex predator with nothing but the acoustic vibration of their throat is not weak. You possess a biological dominance over fear itself. You do not conquer with claws, human. You conquer the spirit." Elena looked down at the cub. The little space wolf was now dead to the world, snoring softly as its thick tail gave a lazy, content twitch against the titanium deck. He was terrified. "Alpha, your empire builds massive dreadnoughts and plasma cannons, but you left a child alone in the dark with monsters. If you want him back, you will promise me right now that he is returned to a home, not a cage." The alien researchers in the room collectively gasped. To speak to a supreme warlord with such blatant, unarmored defiance was a guaranteed death sentence. They expected the matte black dreadnought to immediately vaporize the station. Instead, Alpha Kalen did something that completely shattered the established protocols of galactic diplomacy. He planted his massive, clawed paws over his chest, lowering his towering 8-foot frame into a deep, profoundly reverent bow. Behind him on the flagship bridge, the rows of hyper-muscular honor guards instantly followed their leader, bowing their massive heads in perfect unison toward the screen. "By the blood of the first den, your terms are accepted, Dr. Vance," Kalen rumbled, his voice echoing with absolute sincerity. The Vargari fleet is standing down. But our pact is not with your coalition. Our pact is with you. Before Director Valen could process the catastrophic diplomatic shift, the station's primary proximity alarms began to wail once more. A secondary fleet signature was rapidly dropping out of hyperspace, but it wasn't Vargari. It was a rogue mercenary syndicate tracking the chaos, and they had just fired a cluster of heavy, tracking antimatter torpedoes directly at the defenseless research lab. When the proximity alarms scream, diplomacy instantly defaults back to standard particle physics: find cover or be vaporized. The rogue mercenary fleet had timed their ambush perfectly, exploiting the chaotic standoff between the Coalition flagship and the Vargari dreadnought. Their sleek, dark antimatter torpedoes were now just seconds from impact. If they struck the Aegis, the resulting explosion would annihilate everyone on board, including the sleeping cub. Elena grabbed the adolescent Vargari cub, ignoring her own safety as she covered its body with her fractured, coolant-leaking armor, a purely human parental reaction. She looked at Director Valen, expecting him to order an active stasis shield override, but the robotic director was frozen in an infinite loop of shock and miscalculation. Tactical systems misaligned. Survival probability 0. His vocalizer static glitched. The cold, mechanical official was entirely paralyzed. Humans are space orcs, but when our logic fails, we switch to adrenaline and improvised violence. Synthetic life forms sometimes just crack. On the main viewing screen, Alpha Kalen didn't wait for permission or coordinate with the Coalition defenses. Pact! Initiated, he roared through the wideband frequency. The massive, matte-black Vargari dreadnought's biological engines instantly shifted to a searing, white-hot 100% output. With blinding speed, the 8-foot-tall biological titan physically placed his enormous warship directly between the Aegis and the incoming antimatter torpedoes. The impacts were catastrophic. Antimatter violently sheared away massive sections of the Vargari dreadnought's thick, organic armor plating, exposing pulsing ropes of muscle beneath the translucent membrane. Debris and green coolant fluid exploded into the void. Sarah watched, horrified, as the mighty dreadnought listed heavily. But Kalen had saved the fragile human and his cub. Before the mercenaries could fire their second volley, 2 more massive Vargari Honor Guard dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace. Seeing their alpha injured, they unleashed a storm of raw biological fury. They didn't just return fire, they physically swarmed the mercenary ships. They systematically rammed the sleeker vessels, ripping them apart like paper with massive biological claws and bone-crushing jaws. In mere solar cycles, the entire mercenary syndicate had been reduced to floating metallic dust in the deep void. The battlefield fell into a deafening silence. On the main view screen, a severely damaged Alpha Kalen stood victoriously, his translucent pinkish-tan skin bruised combat black, and his amber eyes blazing with ferocious protective energy. He looked at Elena, and for the first time he let out a loud, ecstatic, biological purr, dropping to his digitigrade knees. He didn't issue an execution order. He presented Sarah with the highest Vargari honor, a massive, polished levitation jawbone crest, carved with the ancient blood marks of the First Denver. It was a sign of eternal biological pack allegiance. The galaxy surviving by hoarding synthetic power, Kalen rumbled, his voice thick with profound respect. But humanity survives by turning monsters into family. You are the alpha of our hearts. Sarah Hayes had broken every protocol of galactic diplomacy, but she had secured a 100% biological military alliance that would last forever, all because she had the courage to sing a frightened child a lullaby. The cold void of space was finally learning that sometimes empathy is the deadliest weapon.